Hello, students, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into a very important topic from your Civics chapter on the working of institutions. We're going to ask a really basic question. Why does a country, especially a big democracy like ours, need political institutions to work properly? So, let's begin. Let's start with a little thought experiment. Just imagine for a moment a country where there are absolutely no rules about who gets to make the big decisions. No system, no proper procedures, and no one to make sure that policies are actually being followed. What do you think would happen in a place like that?
Well, the result would be complete chaos. There would be so much confusion because nobody would know who is responsible for what. And of course, this would lead to conflicts, right? Everyone would start claiming they have the right to make decisions. And what does that lead to? A massive misuse of authority.
So this chaotic situation is what we can call a world without rules. It's a situation where proper governance becomes almost impossible. And this is exactly the problem that political institutions are designed to solve. You see, to avoid exactly this kind of chaos, modern democracies came up with a solution. They created specific arrangements to manage the country's affairs. And these arrangements, well, that's what we call institutions. Their main job is to bring order, to organize the government's work, and to make sure that power is used responsibly for the good of the people.
So this brings us to the main question, doesn't it? What exactly are these political institutions that we're talking about?
Okay, let's break it down. A political institution is basically a set of arrangements and well-defined procedures. It's through these systems that governments can make important decisions, turn those decisions into policies, and, very importantly, settle any disputes that come up. Now, here in India, we have three key institutions that play a major role. First, we have the legislature, which you know is our parliament. Then there's the executive, which includes the prime minister and the council of ministers. And finally, the judiciary, which is made up of the Supreme Court and all the other courts. Now, it's very important to remember that all of these institutions have to work according to the main rule book, our Constitution.
A good way to think about this is to imagine these institutions as the foundation of our democracy. You know, just like the strong pillars of a building hold it up, these institutions support the entire structure of our government. They make sure it stands strong and works for the welfare of all of us.
So why are these institutions so important? Well, a big part of the answer has to do with just how many different jobs a government has to do.
I mean, just think about it. Running a country as large and diverse as India is a huge task. The government is responsible for keeping us secure, for providing education and healthcare, for collecting taxes to pay for development, building roads, and running all sorts of welfare schemes for people who need them. Each of these is a really complex job on its own.
Now, it's just not possible for one person or even one group to handle all of this work effectively. And this is where institutions are so critical. They help to divide up these big responsibilities. The parliament has its job. The ministries have their jobs, and the courts have their own separate functions. This division of labor makes everything clear and ensures everyone is accountable.
And that leads to another key point about institutions. They provide stability. You know, leaders like the prime minister or ministers might change after an election, but the institutions themselves, they continue. The rules, the procedures, the entire structure stays in place. This makes sure that the government's work carries on smoothly, without any big disruptions, no matter who is in charge. Now, you might have heard people complain that institutions are slow and full of paperwork, but in this section, we're going to explore a very interesting idea. Why, in a democracy, a little bit of delay can actually be a very good thing. It's a fair question, right? We often hear that working with institutions means going through endless meetings, committees, routines, and forms. And all of this can often lead to delays and complications, which I know can be very frustrating. But here's the thing. These delays often serve a very important purpose in a democracy. They create time and space for a wider range of people to be consulted before a big decision is made. This process, whether it's a debate in Parliament or a discussion in a cabinet meeting, makes sure that many different viewpoints are heard and considered. Let's just compare two different ways of making decisions. On one hand, a single powerful leader might make decisions very quickly, but those decisions could easily be unfair or even harmful because there are no checks and balances. On the other hand, rule by institutions means slower, more consultative decisions. And this careful process helps prevent mistakes, and it protects all of us citizens from bad policies and the misuse of power.
Let's use a simple example. Your own school. The principal doesn't take every single decision alone, does he or she? Of course not. You have teachers, You have committees for exams or for sports day and other staff members. They all share responsibilities. This system helps make sure the decisions are discussed properly and are fair for all the students. A country's government works in a similar way, just on a much, much bigger scale.
So, how exactly do these institutions protect us? Well, the parliament can question the government's actions through public debates. If the government tries to pass a law that goes against the Constitution, the courts have the power to stop it. And all the established procedures make sure that the government has to be transparent and answerable to the people.
Okay, let's move to our final section, where we'll summarize why these institutions are truly the pillars that hold up our democracy.
There's a quote in your textbook that captures this idea perfectly. It says that institutions might make it hard to take a good decision very quickly. But, and this is the most important part, they also make it equally difficult to rush through a bad decision. And this protection from bad decisions is what makes them so valuable. So let's bring it all together. Institutions are essential for a democracy because, 1, they distribute power, so it's not all in one person's hands. 2, they organize the very complex job of governing. 3, they provide a system of checks and balances to prevent the misuse of power. 4, they protect our fundamental rights as citizens. And finally, they make sure there is order and predictability in how our country is run.
And as we finish up, I want to leave you with a small challenge. Now that you understand what institutions are, I want you to start looking for them at work all around you. Can you see them in your school's student council, in your local city government, or when you read the national news? Observing these processes in action is the best way to understand our democracy. Thank you for listening.